So here's the thing about Todd and Mr. Peanutbutter from BoJack Horseman. It's no secret that these two characters combined have about 3 brain cells. Tops. And that their shared projects are often disasters or horrifying realizations of every child's worst nightmare. But despite the fact that there is very little thought put into any one of their endeavors, they likely have one of the healthiest friendships out of anyone on the entire show. While Todd is initially introduced as Bojack's close friend, I feel that Mr. Peanutbutter ended up being his closest friend and confidant by the end of the series. Evidenced by the fact that he was invited to Todd's fancy party and is often to be shown as a part of his social life in the background of the goings-on of the show. From the second that they actually interact with one another in Zoe's and Zelda's, they click.
I call it Newtopia Rising, Book 1, The Search for a New Utopia.
Book 1? You got me thinking sequel here.
Traveling on a spaceship.
I'm in. I'm out.
They both lift each other's spirits and feed into the energy that each one exudes to the point where they become a force of positive nature, which admittedly isn't always a great thing for the people around them because sometimes these ideas are half-baked. And I fully believe that they are the show's prime examples of friendships between two people who are extremely similar. Those who just get one another. And while we examine a lot of intricate and toxic relationships, I'm glad that there are also positive depictions of these simple friendships as well, as they're equally important to our own development. And not only this, but they examine the more confusing pairings with Todd and PC as well, which is a video I'll be making extremely soon. But ultimately, Todd and Mr. Peanutbutter are one of the more believable and healthy friendships in the show due to their similarities. And when I say healthy, I mean that they provide a great support system for one another and always end up lifting each other up in a positive way. So it is generally good for themselves, but it is worth mentioning that it's not always healthy for the world or the people around them, which is something to keep in mind when you have people of extremely similar but very forceful personalities. And one thing that they have most in common is their optimism and enthusiasm for pretty much anything that they do, even if that thing is just meeting a frog under a bridge. Mr. Peanutbutter is a dog by nature. He is the most easily excited person on the planet, and we can see that represented in nearly everything he does throughout the series. He's been married almost 4 times, simply because he excites himself with the possibilities of what could be. His outlook is all sunshine, so when he's in the throes of a relationship, surrounded by all that love in the honeymoon era, he can't help but be drawn in further, imagining an entire life before he truly gets to know these women to their core. He stated himself that he gets overly excited in the BoJack Horseman show to Jessica Biel.
Ugh, why do you say yes to everything?
I just get excited by the possibilities. Ooh, look, a CD at a coffee shop? That is crazy. Buying it.
And his career has plenty examples of this as well. It's filled with random gigs that he takes because he simply has trouble saying no at the prospect of a new fun project, especially one where he gets a lot of attention, even if that project is opening for, sounds like one of the worst people running for president.
To raise money for the John Edwards campaign. You know, I was talking to one of the volunteers earlier and she was just gushing about how John Edwards touched her. I say let's make this man president so he can touch whoever he wants.
I mean, you have his original sitcom, then a trivia game show host, then a cutscene from a Little Caesars commercial, then onto a gritty prestige crime drama, and finally onto a long-running drama on cable TV about a mysterious ghost dad who travels the world. Yeah. Wouldn't say that's the most consistent career. And that's just his entertainment career. Let's not forget he also ran for governor of California in between these projects. My lord. And in between all this, he's running some mysterious entertainment company, PB Livin', that does the most random projects you've ever seen, most of which are not films. He straight up fills his house with spaghetti strainers at the prospect of a successful TV show based on them that doesn't even make any sense. I don't think he's feigning excitement for these projects by any means, but I don't think there's any meaningful attachment between him and these different jobs that he takes across the years. Whereas Bojack is looking for something to fulfill him, Mr. Peanutbutter is just excited to be needed by others. And in his own mind, he forges that deep connection with the material, despite the fact that there never really was one there in the first place.
Pretty cool dad, huh?
You want to option this greeting card for a movie?
We'll call it Birthday Dad.
But what is it?
It's Birthday Dad.
Oh, okay.
And Todd, is a person in their 20s. One commentary that I really liked from Chickens about Todd and his usually very peculiar storylines is that being in your 20s seems like a series of loosely related, wacky misadventures. And honestly, being in my 20s right now, that cannot be more true. I can't count on my fingers the amount of projects that I've started, so excited about their potential, only for it to fall by the wayside because it was utterly ridiculous in scope. But that is what Todd's storylines are trying to convey. That youthful exuberance that comes to these projects and how important it is to nurture that creativity to be able to succeed and truly be able to be happy in your life. And it plays hand in hand with Mr. Peanutbutter's personality, as he never really grew out of his 20s either, as we see from his choices in women across the show.
They're young. You keep dating women in their 20s.
I do that.
They're not fully formed yet. Life changes people.
Well, not me.
That's kind of my point. You don't ruin these women, they just grow up.
So what you're saying is, they all grow up, but I stay the same age?
So he can completely understand that exuberance because he never really grew out of it. He still, like Todd, can only see the possibilities and hardly looks at the reality of a situation or opportunity. Sure, Todd makes a ton of mistakes, but he ultimately finds exactly what he needs out of his life to make himself happy because he always sees the bright side of things, even his own business failings.
Oh, crap! I accidentally tipped the waitress $8 million! Well, guess I'm broke again.
Some make it when they...
From Halloween in January, to smoothies, to Disneyland, to spaghetti strainers, to papier-mâché Todd, to clown dentists, to running What Time Is It Right Now, to sex robots. Wow, this list goes on forever. He never loses that excitement and optimism. He always gets another idea and always moves forward with as much effort and enthusiasm as he can muster. I honestly really admire that quality, and Mr. Peanutbutter possesses that very same one. Another thing these two characters have in common is their carelessness and carefreeness. I won't say that either of them are necessarily perfect, even when most people in the fandom do like them, especially when combined with the generally carefree attitude. It can lead to the people around them getting hurt as a part of their pursuits, or can cause the situation to take a turn for the worse when it's not taken seriously enough. Listen, I don't like how Mia McKibben was treating Todd in Let's Find Out, but I won't lie, Todd was kind of pissing me off this episode. She's overly cruel, sure, but she is in the right that he needs to start paying more attention to what's around him, especially on a live TV set. And because Todd simply barrels forward doing what he feels is best, he almost ruins the first episode of the show by shutting down the entire studio. That is a huge fuck up, man, and Todd definitely did not deserve to end up with that pen and gloat. That honestly made me so angry. I wish he learned a little bit more here. It speaks to a bit of an issue with Todd and Mr. Peanutbutter's personalities, where they get so wrapped up in their own ideas, they don't really think about how they'll affect those around him, or the world in general. Henry Fondle was a debacle, and it's still pretty unclear why he even went through all the trouble of making him and then keeping him around in the first place. Emily hated it, as most would expect, but then, before he throws it in the trash, he takes it to work? I don't understand. The gesture to Emily is nice, I guess, but he didn't really think it through enough to consider how thoroughly this would creep her out, and then it nearly sets PC's apartment on fire, and then gets in a position of power to where he can sexually harass his coworkers. How about when he just wins the gubernatorial race, and I mean race, as in the ski race, without a second thought as to what would happen? I mean, he was stuck up in the sky for the majority of this episode, so he didn't know, but seriously, from context clues, you can't tell something more important is going on there. And then he resigns, and that allows Mr. Peanutbutter to run in the first place. Todd sets him up, and BB knocks him down. And Mr. Peanutbutter often ignores the feelings of his significant others as well, not really considering how his actions will affect them and their daily life. I don't think Diane handled his running for governor in the most professional way, but ultimately I always sided with her in these disputes, mostly because Mr. Peanutbutter does not even care about being the governor. He directly states later in the season that the only reason he wanted to be governor in the first place was for attention and to get those people to like him.
If this governor thing is really important to you...
It's not. You saw me in there. I'm a terrible leader.
I don't want to be governor. I just wanted people to like me.
And so, he has absolutely no beliefs, simply barreling toward a win by doing whatever Katrina tells him to do, even if those actions are overtly evil in nature. Forgetting Diane, who he knows cares a great deal about these issues, he's also doing severe damage to the world around him in general. All he had to do was stand up to Katrina and tell her that he wanted to be against fracking, but instead, he waited to see what other people wanted from him, not considering that fracking sucks and is terrible. And as a result, his house falls into a giant pit. Pretty obvious consequences there, and Diane is so right to blame him. Which leads me to the fact that they both have trouble listening to others. A ton of people love Todd, and we all know that, but there is definitely a growing number who find him to be irritating, especially due to his inability to listen to the people around him. It's a reason why a lot of his and Mr. Peanut Butter's ideas are so overtly terrible and not thought out. They don't look for any outside opinions, and even when provided with them, they will actively ignore them or work around them to get the cookie caper done. Think about that poor accountant who worked for PB Livin'. He repeatedly tells them that their ideas are terrible and that he cannot continue to run a business while sinking all of his money into ideas that generate zero revenue, or just don't get finished because he moves on to something else. Cabracadabra is also the best example for this echo chamber that they surround themselves in, as soon as Emily leaves, having no opinions being voiced by any women, the business changes into an incredibly sexist and misogynistic venture. I honestly don't think these two get enough criticism for this absolute train wreck, even if it does result in Mr. Peanut Butter being able to save Pacific Ocean City from the giant tangled mess of spaghetti. Hold on, what the fuck am I even talking about right now? They had an amazing business on their hands that could have been so important as a safe space for women in America going forward, but because they didn't think to ask anyone but each other about their decisions, they turned it into one of the worst companies in America at the time. As Stefani described it, Hooters on wheels. And like Diane says, it undermines the exact reason it was started in the first place, which is incredibly frustrating. The only reason this idea came to fruition in the first place is because Todd told Emily about this idea, and she is much more organized and practical than he and Mr. Peanut Butter are put together. So she came up with an actual plan and had knowledge about coding, so she could honestly do about 90% of the work, it seems. But when Emily quits, it's like she vanishes. I know she's left the company, but you don't think to ask her about these major fundamental changes to the business that you both conceived of together, because she would have been able to steer him back on the right path very quickly, especially since the only reason Cabracadabra takes this turn in the first place is greed.
Turns out there's a huge demand for a safe space for women. Who knew?
Honestly, never would have crossed my mind.
So, I was thinking, what's the next step? What if we made our safe space for women also available to men?
And it's not like there's no other women around for them to ask either, even if Todd is maybe uncomfortable with Emily. They've got employees, ask them. Ask Princess Carolyn. Ask Diane, she's literally sitting 10 feet from Mr. Peanut Butter during some of these decisions. It all stems from the same issue of him fundamentally plowing forward without really thinking about consequences, or thinking to ask the people around him for their opinion on the matter. And it almost always results in a project being undermined, unfinished, or shoddily put together, which is incredibly indicative of being in your 20s, though, I must say. And Mr. Peanut Butter is commonly criticized for this very same issue, mostly when connected to Diane, as he is a rather inconsiderate husband to her a large amount of the time. We see that from the very beginning of their relationship, Diane had told him that she doesn't enjoy big surprises or gestures, and for years afterwards, Mr. Peanut Butter continues to throw her giant parties, even after seemingly understanding what she would actually like to do to celebrate things. And it's not just like she told him one time or anything. She tells him over and over again that she doesn't appreciate surprises and being thrown parties, but he still makes that mistake. It's likely unbelievably frustrating for Diane, and is largely the reason they divorced later in the series, because he makes her feel like he doesn't care about her, even if it's obvious to him that he does, and that her own opinion doesn't even matter. And that's something that's extremely important for Diane and her sense of self. See, Mr. Peanut Butter is a fun-loving guy. He doesn't understand fundamentally how someone could not enjoy a party where everyone else is having a good time. It's what he would like, so he assumes everyone else wants to join in on the fun. And he doesn't really listen when the people around him complain or voice concerns. It's not just a problem with Diane. We see in Mr. Peanut Butter's booze that he has had this issue with nearly every one of his wives, although I maintain that Jessica Biel's was genuinely not his fault. He tried to get to her. At the beginning of the night, Katrina directly tells him not to leave her her alone though, and all throughout the party he's distracted by other people and refuses to take her along with him.
But I will not leave your side again. Oh my God, is that Erica?
No, please don't go talk to Erica.
Katrina, Erica doesn't know anybody else at this party. It would be rude to leave her all by herself.
Well, can I at least come with you?
You know Erica can't talk to two people at once on account of her split brain procedure. Why don't you go talk to, the teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Ben Stein?
And then, when she states she's not having any fun, he's shocked somehow. Most would wonder how he could miss all the signs that Katrina's been throwing out all evening, but like I said, he just doesn't listen or consider other people. We even see this exhibited directly with Todd, too, when Mr. Peanutbutter takes over his Disney World in Yesterdayland. He kind of inserts himself into Todd's thing without thinking about how it would affect the project overall, or whether or not Todd even wanted him there. And then he comes in trying to take credit for their success when he was the one who reported Todd initially and almost got it shut down. He wasn't really thinking about how it would affect Todd, and when he comes back, he just expects everyone to be happy that it's succeeded, fully missing the fact that Todd is genuinely angry at him and has expressed that previously in this episode. So when these two are put together, it becomes this insanely insulated echo chamber where the only ideas ever presented and encouraged are their own. And as much as Bojack will point out the flaws in Smoothies, they won't listen, and we'll just move forward with the launch party. Because who doesn't love a party? And the last thing that these two have in common is that they are compassionate and supportive. I've listed quite a few negative qualities that they have in common, but you cannot deny that despite the fact that they don't really listen or ask other people for their opinion, they don't stop supporting each other and those around them. Mr. Peanutbutter is the only one who actually enjoys and applauds Todd's rock opera. Everyone else is kind of distracted or not paying attention or feigning excitement for him, and it shows how they kind of click right from the get-go due to their general enthusiasm for, well, everything. And their positive outlook. When Todd becomes his driver, there's immediate chemistry in terms of their friendship as well. Even if the conversation is excruciatingly shallow and light, they do genuinely enjoy being around one another. I mean, the interview for this position in the first place is utterly absurd, but both of them simply accept that it makes no sense. Todd goes along with the "you can use my resume" bit, and Mr. Peanutbutter doesn't seem fazed by the fact that Todd never has any idea what he's talking about, which might play into the whole not listening thing. But in general, Mr. Peanutbutter is always providing Todd with opportunities and fully indulges his ridiculous ideas in a way that no one else is really willing to, and it makes them a uniquely perfect match for one another. But it's not just with each other either. Todd's monologue about the hokey pokey is one of the best pieces of advice that Bojack gets about his recovery in the future, and Todd, even through all the ups and downs of their friendship, is still ultimately there for Bojack at the end of the day, still caring about him and supporting his needs, like when he sees that he's overwhelmed at Princess Carolyn's wedding, which is incredibly touching and shows how much love he has for those who are his friends. I think their friendship has almost been renewed by the end of the series, where they never quite had a true friendship before, but now I think they are well on their way. And it's largely because of Todd's positive outlook and the amount of compassion he holds for those he truly cares about. We also see this exemplified all throughout Hooray, a Todd episode, where he is always willing to do whatever he can to help his friends in their endeavors. Whether it be Princess Carolyn, Mr. Peanutbutter, Diane, he is always supporting them and doing as much as he can to help them with whatever task they have on their plates at the moment. And Diane even says to Pickles that if there's one thing she knows about Mr. Peanutbutter, it's that he loves people deeply and unconditionally. That's his main trait, and while it does of course come with flaws, it also leads to some beautiful, everlasting, and wonderfully wacky friendships. And while yes, Todd and Mr. Peanutbutter definitely created an echo chamber for themselves that came with some overtly terrible ideas, I do think their relationship always was beneficial for each other and helped them by being a strong support system throughout the series. But let me know if you agree in the comments below, and if you want to see these videos early or the unedited versions, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/PosiTVty, PosiTVty. There you also get exclusive voting power, so you can tell us whatever you want to see on the channel, and we will do it. But we appreciate all the support we get on YouTube as well. If you're new here, welcome, and we hope you enjoy your time. Every like, view, subscriber, they all mean a lot to us, so continue doing that. And we'll see you for the next video. Hopefully I can come up with a better outro than this one, even though I almost say the same thing every single time.